Welcome back to the Study Abroad Pod. From temples of Thailand to the vibrant Spanish coastlines, today's episode features the equally far-reaching and unforgettable experiences of three University of Nevada, Las Vegas students. Angela and Nicole, both Mexican-American, share how living in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and Madrid, Spain challenged and enriched their sense of identity. Kathleen joins with her own stories from Alicante, Spain, reflecting on connection, independence, and growth abroad.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Study Abroad Pod. I'm Kathleen. I'm a UNLV student here with two other UNLV graduates here to talk about our experiences abroad. Let's start with our majors and where we studied abroad. Angela, if you want to go first.
Hi, yeah, I'm Angela. I recently graduated as an international business major from here at UNLV, the business school, let's go. But I had the opportunity to study abroad in Chiang Mai, Thailand. Absolutely loved it. I think a big part of shaping why I went that way is the focus on language. So as a Latinx or Mexican American student, I think language has always been a big focus within my degree within international business. So I think Chiang Mai, Thailand kind of connected all of that, the culture that it brought on. So definitely, I know a little bit of an out of the way location, but I definitely loved it. So I think that leads us to you, Nicole.
Hi, yeah, I'm Nicole. I went to Madrid, Spain, and kind of for a similar reason to you, Angela, because I am also Mexican American, but my Spanish is a little bit rusty, or at least it was when I went there. So I wanted to go practice my Spanish and kind of get in touch with those roots. So I went to Madrid, Spain to study, and I am a kinesiology and public health major, also recently graduated from UNLV. So it was also a big adjustment because while I was in Spain, I was definitely not taking all of those STEM classes. Why did you study abroad, Kathleen?
Yeah, so I'm studying hospitality here at UNLV. I'm going to graduate this upcoming spring, and I studied abroad in Alicante, Spain. I wanted to really improve my Spanish speaking skills, and I knew that immersion would be the best way to do so. And also, Alicante has a beach. They're right on the Mediterranean. So, coming from Las Vegas with the mountains, it was a nice change of pace. What were some of your guys' first reactions when you arrived? I remember for me, I was really shocked by kind of the way that the city was structured. It's right on the beach. It's really different from how Las Vegas is because Las Vegas has the strip and then a bunch of suburbs. There was a lot more downtown area. And I also just remember loving the weather. I went in the spring, so it was January when I got there, but it was still 65 degrees and sunny. It was super wonderful. And the beach was just amazing. What about you guys? What were some of your first reactions?
I think similar to you, Kathleen, my big reaction was the structure of the city was very different from Las Vegas. I got to walk around more and use public transit like buses and a metro, and I was very impressed with how efficient and clean and frankly just lovely that experience was. And it definitely made me aspire to hopefully live in a city that's very similar in the future. And as well as how slow time just kind of moves in Spain. Everything is a lot more fast here in Vegas and it's a metropolitan area still, Madrid was, but everyone still likes to take their time and enjoy themselves along the way. So I really enjoyed that. How about you, Angela? What was one of your first reactions?
Yeah, I think for me it was pretty different. I was coming from Las Vegas, so very desert, very dry. It was just the summer, so we were 120 something. So then I went to Thailand, which is also relatively hot, but it's the humidity that hit me a lot harder. I would say honestly, it's kind of very interesting to navigate a different climate when you go abroad. And it was, I think, part of the transitional phase. It was around 2 weeks transitioning, getting used to humidity because I've never really lived in that much humidity. But overall, it was a pretty easy city to navigate. It's a college town, so there's a centric college area where you have a lot of things or a lot of activities for college students. So there's a lot to do within my neighborhood, and then kind of branch out once I got a little bit more comfortable with my zone as well. Getting more familiar with the area was something that was very concerning or a big thing that my parents wanted me to focus on while I was there because they wanted to make sure that I was kind of in a safe space. But how did your guys' families feel when you told them that you wanted to study abroad?
Well, for me, my family was pretty comfortable with it because my sister had already studied abroad years before, and she actually works in the international program space. So it was always kind of an expectation when I was entering college that I would be studying abroad at one point. It was just a matter of when. So they were mostly excited, a little bit scared because, I'm going to be so far away. But generally speaking, it was pretty positive. How about you, Kathleen?
Yeah, I think I was kind of similar. My mom had studied abroad in Spain when she was in college, so she was super for the idea. She was really passionate about it for me. My dad, on the other hand, was very nervous about me being far away and my safety and kind of all the things. But I think all the resources from UNLV and from USAC kind of helped convince him and my mom as well. But what about you, Angela? Did anyone try to convince you like not to go?
Oh, I think it absolutely went that route for a good portion of it. So when I initially applied, it was mostly because my sister motivated me to. I'd be the first student to study abroad. She had already finished her degree, so she was like, "No, you have to squeeze it in." That's I think the one thing I regret not doing in my undergrad. So then we applied together. I think we did it pretty quickly. So we just kind of like rushed it one night. We're like, "Yeah, let's try to get everything in, see what happens," and then once I started getting further into the process, it was definitely like, oh man, I think I should definitely have a conversation with my parents about this because it's obviously I'm the youngest. I'd be the first to go, something that they'd never really heard about as a first gen student. So I think I was more nervous actually telling my mom than my dad. My mom's a very nervous mother. She's a little hesitant to have us doing things on her own. And my dad's always like, yeah, kind of pushing you to be more confident. He was also still very nervous. So I think trying to navigate that conversation was very not necessarily difficult, but it was something that you had to kind of be cautious about. I think I anticipated it would be a lot worse than it actually was. Because again, I think they mostly have the idea that I was doing it for my own good as well, just to kind of figure things out. What would your study abroad be titled as a movie? I think you guys had a very cinematic experience going around in Spain.
I think that if I could title my study abroad experience, it'd be something like Under the Mediterranean Sun or like maybe The Adventures of Kathleen. I feel like I really was lucky and had the opportunity to like travel a bunch in Spain and around the countries nearby. And I feel like I got to experience so many different places and cultures and people. And then also, it was so lovely to be on the Mediterranean on the beach like that. I think like the last 2 months, every day when I got out of class, I would just head straight to the beach and tan and play in the water. So definitely something about just relaxing in the sun and hanging out. What about you, Nicole?
That's so amazing. I love that. I can't say the same because I was not by an ocean as much as I do love the beach, but in like a similar vein, I got the chance to travel a lot throughout Spain as well as the rest of Europe, and I even made an adventure to Africa. So I feel like I could be like bus, train, boat. I don't know, something that's like, kind of in a similar vein to like Eat, Pray, Love. Um, or like I don't know if I have an inspiring movie title, but everything was just so picturesque and beautiful. Bus, train, boat, I think is a good one though, because that's literally all the modes of transportation that I was able to take while I was there. Because whenever I was traveling throughout Spain, I always used a train, and I loved trains or buses. And then when I would go outside of Europe, I was often taking a plane. And when I went to Morocco and Greece, because I got the opportunities to go there, I ended up taking a boat in both of those places. So something like plane, boat, train, along those lines.
I think I had a different kind of experience, especially again those first 2 weeks. So I was thinking more along like desert rat in the rains, because I think that was there's like one very distinct memory I have. it was during my second day. We went up to Doinatanon, and it was rainy, which was it was not even like super super rainy according to the people there, but I know I was soaked up to here. So I had an umbrella. I still had soaked to the bone, and I was like, I don't know if this is for me. Maybe they were right. It kind of seeded these doubts, but I think it's also what solidified kind of the experience that I ended up building about, okay, I can't get wet anymore, so I guess I'm already here. Might as well just kind of keep going.
So, Angela, aside from all the rain and stuff, what was a big surprise about daily life in your city?
Oh, I think a lot of the similarities to Mexican American culture definitely wasn't too much of an adjustment. I thought I would have maybe some type of culture shock, and I think that's what made it a little bit of an easier transition because there's a lot of cultural experiences that were very similar. I know, thanks to USAC for organizing that arrival orientation. But one of the things that they mentioned in that one is the fact that people, when they say that they're going to make plans with you, then they don't make plans with you. It's a very Thai thing to do. And I would like to say that it's also a very Mexican American thing to do. And I do that very regularly. So I was like, oh, yeah, people just do that. And then I realized that there were people around me that were not Mexican American. They were like, oh, okay, that's strange. I'll definitely keep my eye out for that. But I think that's one of the biggest surprises, just how closely intertwined the culture can be with something that is like so far and so vastly different in my eyes at least.
I for sure found a lot of comfort, kind of in a similar situation. I didn't find that I had a lot of culture shock when I was in Spain, and that was definitely part of the orientation process. They were like, "You're going to experience culture shock within the first couple weeks. It's definitely going to happen." And I think coming from a Mexican American background, I found that there was a lot of parallels with Spanish culture and Mexican culture, and so it was very easy to adjust. Like for an example, like the sobremesa, like everyone, when you go have a meal, you take a long time at the meal and you sit down and you talk, and the waiters are going to take a long time, and everyone is just enjoying themselves in that sense. Or even just the community gathering and the way you greet people, right? In Spain, there's two kisses on the cheek. I don't always do two kisses on the cheek, but you're always hugging or kissing someone on the cheek. And when I see like my aunts and my family in Mexico, so I didn't have that much of a culture shock because it was pretty similar. What about you, Kathleen?
I think similarly, I didn't experience too much culture shock, but I think some of the big things for me was the schedule of kind of the Spanish culture is much more relaxed. People, like you said, they take more time to enjoy with each other than I think we do here in the US. Like what Nicole said about greeting people, they're very like the kisses and the hugs. That was a thing. I know something else they mentioned at my orientation is that it's much more common for people to stare in Spain. Like in the US, we like are told really like don't stare, don't stare. But like in Spain, it's not necessarily like a bad thing. It's just something they do. So they were like, if people are staring at you, like it's not a bad thing. That's just like something that happens. And so that was really good because I think at the beginning I felt a lot of anxiety about like, oh my God, everyone can tell I'm American and they're gonna think I'm like, you know, but yeah. Oh, another big one is Spanish people are pretty loud. Um, and they were like, people are gonna be loud at dinners and when you're like in groups, people talk over each other and it's not like rude like it is here. It's just kind of a way of people being excited and being passionate about what they were talking about. And I think USAC prepared us really well in the orientation. They definitely mentioned like the big differences between the US and Spain, and that was really, really helpful. Angela, did you ever feel out of place or how did you find some community in
Yeah.
Thailand?
I think what was really interesting is in Chiang Mai again, it's a very there's a high migrant population from Yunnanese. So I went there to actually study Mandarin instead of Thai, and it was kind of cool to see that different connection. So I connected a lot with the migrant students that were coming into Chiang Mai University, but also with some of the local students. And then I ended up going to a couple of different dancing places because I'm a big dancer. And then I got to meet a lot of the local community. I think that's what I mostly focused on, which is what kind of led me to feel a little bit more comfortable. So like I went to Latin American dancing, so I did like salsa, I did bachata, I did some West Coast swing, which I ended up taking on over there. Very interesting, that I had never done over here. But then just kind of, slowly integrating myself into more local events, I think is what definitely made me feel a lot more comfortable within the community too. I think I came out with the best spots to eat at. So if you guys want any recommendations for Chiang Mai, just let me know. But I think I bring a lot of my Latin American culture into my experiences abroad. I think it's very much a part of who I am. So generally how I socialize, I think has led a different way to connect with the communities over there. And that's where I find a lot of connection with the Thai students. Do you think being a Latinx student shaped how people saw you abroad? Was it any different?
Actually, I do think so a little bit because the like historic implications of the relationship between Mexico and Spain, I found the culture shock was less because they have similarities given their history, right? But I also look very Spanish, so I blended in very easily, and I found that I was treated like a Spaniard would be compared to a lot of my friends who either maybe looked more American or maybe more indigenous, whatever it might have been. And so I found like a certain kind of privilege with that. And eventually I even started to speak like them, and it was very like assimilative. But then it was interesting for me because I also was trying to like connect with my roots, my mom being Mexican, and I was reflecting on this, and it was kind of weird because it's like I'm not Spanish, right? I'm a Mexican American, but I'm being treated as a Spanish person. So that part was kind of interesting, and it was definitely like a really big takeaway from my study abroad experience in Spain. But that being said, it did also make me be in a better position to connect with the Spanish community there because of those similarities. There was a like a club that before they opened up for like the activities, they actually did dance classes. And so I would do like salsa and bachata classes, and that really helped me get in touch with Spanish culture and meet some more locals because it was like a very local place. And then one of my trips actually in Morocco, I met a ton of Mexicans that were studying abroad in Spain, and I really got to like find a community with them throughout that trip. And it was like just a very beautiful moment to connect with them as I'd been like practicing my Spanish the whole time and also like kind of getting in touch with my roots. So I had like a very interesting relationship while I was over there in general. Kathleen, I know you were kind of worried about being seen as a typical American, right?
I think there were definitely moments where I found that coming from like an American background was a strength. I tried not to rely too heavily on that because I really wanted to like be immersed in the Spanish culture, so not bring like my American ways to everything I did while I was there. Um, but I do feel like it was awesome when I was connecting with other students, not just students at the University of Alicante, but when I would travel, I would meet a ton of other students who were from Italy or like England, or even other students from like countries in South America. And I think it was really nice to kind of have that experience of being an American and being able to share that with people because people were pretty fascinated by it at some points. But also just getting then to learn about other people's cultures too. So I feel like it was a strength when it was something that we could just all share with each other, and it was a way to connect with other people and kind of get to know me and me get to know them. I think sometimes it was a challenge because people knew I was American. So I had mentioned that I had wanted to go to like improve my Spanish. And one of the issues I encountered was like a lot of people knew I was American or not a native Spanish speaker and would just speak back to me in English, which made it kind of hard to practice my Spanish. But I think it was just something I had to like kind of work through, and I just started speaking back in Spanish to people until they would speak Spanish with me. Um, and so I made it work, but those were kind of the ways I think it affected me the most. So what is one skill that you guys have gained that you keep using in your daily life?
I think one habit that I brought back would be to really just try to like slow down sometimes and enjoy life. Like I think I maximized that in Spain, and I really want to try to go back to that sometimes because I think being back in the US, I get caught up in like the hustle and bustle of United States culture or American culture. And in Spain, I was able to like both get work done, like we were students. I was being studious while I was there, but I was also able to travel and like experience the local culture and cuisine and make more friends. And I really try to bring that back with me and find when I'm getting really like caught up in my head about all these things I have to do to also slow down, enjoy life, go outside, like that sort of thing. How about you, Angela?
So I'm a very big talker, especially when I go to Mexico. I'm talking to everybody in the street. Somebody passes by, I say hi, hello. Same thing I did in Thailand, where I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna talk to people on the bus because what's the worst thing they can do that they don't want to talk, and that's entirely okay. But definitely kind of getting to know more people, connecting with people anywhere that you go is going to make life a lot more fun and engaging. But yeah, definitely a lot of different ways that I use to strike up conversation, also in very Las Vegas fashion. I always bring decks of cards everywhere. I actually have a collection of decks of cards from countries that I visited, from different cities, actually, overall. I have a total of 50 now, 50-ish. But that's something that I use to strike up conversation. So I would be at the park. There was a park right next to my dorm. And there was like some tables. So I would set up for solitaire. And then people would come by and they'd be like, "What are you doing? Can I play with you? Can you teach me?" Things like that. At the airport too. Just set up the solitaire and it gets you so many conversations started. I think it's a very Las Vegas thing. And I think a lot of people recognize it as, oh, I think you are probably from somewhere that has a lot of card games going on. So I think it's very representative of both somebody that is extroverted and is open to talking, but also somebody who is very welcoming and is open to teaching. So it's definitely a habit that I kind of carry everywhere.
I think a big thing for me that happened when I studied abroad was really gaining confidence in my ability to like you said, just speak to people out and about. I'm kind of a more like shy, reserved person, and when I went abroad, I kind of needed to like break out of that shell and just interact with people. And as someone who's going into the hospitality industry where the whole industry is about interacting and talking to people, I think it was really good for me to get that experience of one, having to like be pushed out of my comfort zone. And then two, also, I learned a lot about speaking to people of different cultures. I met so many people when I was abroad, people from Spain, but also people from all over the world. And I think it was really beneficial for me to understand how different cultures communicate, what could be the challenges there, because hospitality, it's a global industry. I definitely want to be able to travel again with this career. So, really just building those people skills and especially people skills across cultures was super, super important for me. What about you, Nicole?
I think that's a really good point, Kathleen. I would say similarly, I needed to practice just crossing cultural barriers in that sense. My career goals are to become a doctor. And so, very kind of different. Like, it's not necessarily a global industry always, depending on what you're practicing, but you're always encountering like people from different backgrounds, right? And you want to do your best to help them. So it's important to develop a skill of cultural competency, which I had always talked about in my classes at UNLV as a public health major too. It's a very like big message, but I got to actually practice those things while I was abroad. And I was meeting people from all over Europe or all over the world, really, because Europe is like a very like global place. People travel there from all over. So, yeah, I would say it was a similar experience. I also had an opportunity to go to the doctor there, which was not so fun because I was sick, but also kind of cool because I could talk to the doctor and I could ask him questions about the medical system. And I would also have those conversations with people, like in during dinner, actually, because I lived in the dorms in Spain, and so in the dorms, it was not as many Spanish students. It was actually mostly also other international students. So I would talk to like sometimes Spanish students, but other times I would talk to people from Portugal or Germany or what have you. And whenever they found out that I was studying medicine, they would start talking about healthcare systems. And I was enlightening at times because people would be telling me about their healthcare system. And then I would also be telling them about the American healthcare system. And we would kind of like compare those and like see what the benefits of the two different systems were, or like the conversely, right? Like the bad sides of them. So it was definitely very enlightening to say the least. What about you, Angela?
Yeah, I think for me, again, mostly language focused, but it really did tie down the fact that I want to make sure that within international business, that I do focus on that cross-cultural exchange, on that immersion wherever I kind of go to visit. So this is why I'm just kind of collecting languages as I go, right? So I did Thai, I did Mandarin, I speak Spanish natively, now English. And one of the biggest things I also noticed in Thailand that I heard you mention before is slowing down, right? So there's a lot of other countries that kind of have a little bit of a slower pace than we do here in the US. But how did you, Nicole, how did you manage to kind of slow down and balance, but also still get to know the rest of the country, rest of the region? You traveled quite a bit, and I know some students are stressed about having to balance schoolwork with exploring, right? How did you kind of find the space for that for yourself?
So for me, it was kind of interesting because I went to Spain or Madrid predominantly because of the classes that they offered there. None of them were science classes. I was doing mostly my gen eds while I was there. So I was taking a drawing class, I was taking a political science class, and the language classes, as well as a cooking class, right? And so as someone who was used to hard sciences like biology, chemistry, anatomy, and physiology, the workload that I had while studying abroad was different. Like, so I didn't have to sit down and study as much as I was used to back home. However, the type of classes that they offer with USAC in particular, I think allow for this like immersive experience while you're also taking classes. So my drawing class, for instance, we would go on like little field trips, if you will, and we would meet up at a museum or a park or some other part of Madrid and really got to know the city because we were drawing the city. I would bring like my sketchbook or my notebooks if I needed to study for a different class or like write an essay. I would bring them on planes and trains and boats even. So I think that was a way that I was able to balance it out pretty well. Um, how about you, Kathleen?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that I also traveled a lot and I also kind of felt that shift in the slower culture. Um, and it was really important for me to like still perform well in school abroad and to still, as I said, I went to like improve my Spanish skills. So I really did want to focus on school. One thing that I think was unique, at least in my experience, was the classes were kind of structured more like when I was in high school and I would just have all my classes every day rather than now in college where like I only have them once or twice a week. And so I think that that was honestly beneficial because I had less homework since I was spending more time in class. And then two, when I was in class, I could just focus at being in class. And then when I was done with class, I knew that I didn't have a ton of homework, so I could go and travel. Um, so I think that was really important. And I totally agree. I had a class that was kind of just all about the history and culture of Spain. So we took a bunch of field trips to different places in Alicante and learned all about that. We got to go to the bunkers from their Civil War and like go down underground, which was kind of really crazy, but it was just a super cool way to like balance that class work and exploring. So I know we talked about our parents a little bit earlier and whether or not they were supportive or nervous, but if you guys could have invited them into one moment when you were abroad, which would it be? Because I think that I would have wanted to bring my dad to Spain during Carnavales, which is kind of like their like Halloween almost celebration. It happens in February and it was super crazy. There were people everywhere, but I think that it would have shown my dad that one, it was super fun and Spain was such a good environment, but then two, that like there were still ways to be safe and there were still um safety measures and like it was still easy to navigate even during like the chaos. I think that that would have been really eye-opening for him to see. But he did later on get to come to Spain, so that was cool too. But do you guys wish you could have brought someone or have any advice for future parents?
Well, one person that I would have loved to transport to Spain with me is my big sister. She is like absolutely one of my favorite people in the world. So I'm just missing her most of the time. And really because of the job she does and the nature of it, she did visit me in Madrid. I got the opportunity to like show her around some of the places that I had found and really like show her me in my element. But if I could have brought her to a different part of me studying abroad, it would have been when I went to Sevilla for a flamenco festival and I got to dress up. I bought a flamenco dress. It was an expense, but I think it was worth it in the end. And I dressed up. I got all of the traditional clothing and I got on a carriage and we went to all these little, they essentially set up tents. And you go and you visit the tents and it's just a lovely time. It was probably a highlight of my experience. Highly recommend anyone to do that if they can. And I would have loved to have my sister there with me, hopefully like in a little flamenco dress of herself, like and just really soaking up that like beautiful part of Spanish culture. I think she would have enjoyed that just in general, and it would have just been a lovely experience to share with her.
Angela, do you have any advice for parents of future Latinx students who are nervous about their children studying abroad?
I think one thing that is kind of hard for a lot of Latinx parents to assimilate when their student is going abroad is the fact that, they more than likely migrated to bring you to a safer space. And this is kind of where they want to keep you, safe space that's under their wings. But I think it's also very important to trust your child in the judgment that you've given them. So for parents, know that your child is making the decisions that are best for themselves under your guidance while they're doing a study abroad program. So trusting your kid is, I think, one of the biggest things that you can do, because again, they'll have the support that you can offer them, but also the support that USAC kind of brings as a program, because there's going to be a very big difference from being a tourist in a country with maybe people that you don't know, or maybe going by yourself if you're going by yourself, versus doing a study abroad program where you have a little bit of a stronger system of support, whether it be by closer communication with parents, by other students that are kind of in your age group, and then the resident directors that USAC connects you with. So definitely trust in the system that they have set up for your students, because students are pretty much set up for success.
Was there a moment when you felt really proud of yourself while you were studying abroad?
So I think I was just really proud of myself for being able to be really independent and juggle both like living in this new place by myself, but also exploring a ton of other new places. And I felt just very like knowledgeable and independent at the same time. So I got to really know myself better. But for Kathleen, now that you're heading to Montevideo, what lessons from Alicante will you take with you on your new adventure?
Yes, definitely. I didn't mention this before, but I loved studying abroad in Alicante so much that I decided I'm going to do it again. I'm not going to Alicante. I'm going to Montevideo, Uruguay. And there was also going to be like a week and a half in Buenos Aires, Argentina, which I am super, super excited about. I'm definitely going to take all the skills that I've learned about myself in Spain with me, the confidence, the ability to communicate with people across different cultures, the ability to put myself out of my comfort zone to kind of grow and develop as a person in my language skills. I'm definitely going to take all of that, as well as I think in Spain, I just felt super lucky all the time and super grateful. And so I want to make sure I take that with me to Argentina too. I felt like, and Uruguay, I felt like I got to soak up every moment just because I was so grateful that that was an opportunity I had. So I'll definitely be soaking up all the adventures there as well. So we're drawing to a close here, and I just want to really quick have us all share before we go what the biggest way you think you've changed since studying abroad is.
I think I'll go ahead and take that question first. I think my confidence grew substantially. So not just confidence in overall how I present myself, but also in trusting my own intuition and the decisions that I make. Because I think one of the biggest things that you have to be honest about study abroad is that it can be hard, but that does not mean that you can't navigate it. So as long as you trust yourself and you build your own self-confidence, you're really able to navigate so many more things than what you might be experiencing on your day-to-day life.
I completely agree. And with that, I think building my confidence also allowed for me to be more adaptable to whatever situation someone might throw at me. And so that is definitely one way that I've changed the most.
I totally agree with what you guys are both saying. I think my confidence and my ability to adapt has totally been what's changed. And yeah, just that confidence in myself to do things that are challenging is something I've really taken with me from that study abroad program. Thank you guys for joining us. This was super fun. And if you missed it, we did record an episode in Spanish in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month that came out last week. So make sure you check that out if you're interested. And we appreciate the time. And I appreciate you guys for chatting with me.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Study Abroad Pod, a podcast brought to you by the University Studies Abroad Consortium. Please listen, subscribe, and review us on Buzzsprout or wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow USAC on all your favorite social media channels at Study Abroad USAC. And if you have an idea for a future episode or want to learn more about study abroad, you can email us at studyabroad@usac.edu.